I would call this the largest scale hacking scandal we have ever seen in this game.
He was forced to confess. It was not something that he did willingly.
It changed an entire 2 years of Geometry Dash top player history.
I know how much money you made from YouTube. It wasn't a small amount.
All of us have that one game that we share a very special connection with. Either because it helped us get through a rough time in our life, or it allowed us to meet others and form long-term friendships. In my case, that game is Geometry Dash, a silly little mobile game that you even might have had on your phone at some point. But do not let that undersell you on the absolute insanity that has occurred over the years in this game. Because it turns out I was not alone. There's millions of other players that enjoy the game just as much as I do. And when a community like that forms, it is only natural for the game to become competitive.
Oh my god! Ben! What? I just beat EXO!
It is hard to put into words the amount of skill these players have. From executing almost pixel-perfect movements to pushing the limits of what humans can do in this game. Tons of friendly rivalries have formed over the years, with top players helping each other out and cheering each other on. It was all about pushing the limits together. However, the story that I'm gonna tell you today is what happens when one of those players decides that everyone else is worth jack shit. Welcome to Geometry Dash. Originally starting as a mobile game, it was eventually released on Steam a year later. The gameplay is actually very similar to the old classic The Impossible game, but with way more layers added on top of it, including an editor. This means anyone can go and create their own unique user levels and upload them to the servers for others to play. This feature alone is basically what has carried this game over the years. The developer himself clearly has shown no signs of maintaining the game on an active basis, which means we rely on players to create levels and content to play. And oh my god, they do it well. This game is truly blessed with one of the most passionate and creative communities out there. A badge that we should wear proudly wherever we go. But it's not just on the creative side where players have pushed the limits over the years. Just like in any game, with difficulty comes glory. One of the most prestigious titles any player can hold is to be the verifier of the current hardest level. The community has gathered over the years to create a list that ranks levels based on their difficulty, with the level that sits on the throne on top being the current hardest level that anyone has ever beaten. An absolute horrid and treacherous task that has taken a toll on many of the best players in the game. Beating a top 1 demon is not something that you do overnight. It's a journey that can take hundreds of thousands of attempts to complete. But at the end, you stand as a true symbol of determination and skill, with everyone's attention on you. So what would happen if someone tried faking their way to the top?
A lot of people say that anyone can beat anything in this game, which I personally kind of believe. On one end, it's just kind of like a dedication thing, but because the game is so simple by nature, the number 1 player is kind of like what you should reach after. Kind of like a swimmer trying to become Michael Phelps, right? But without the genetic advantage.
The history of the number 1 player actually goes really far back. Over the years, a countless number of players have actually shared that title. Whoever was considered the best player was actively beating the hardest levels and pushing the boundaries of this game further. This title, however, would always be in contention. For a majority of this game's lifespan, it actually always was a group of players that was hanging around at the top. You would have constant rivalries with both sides just pushing each other further and further. And while they were having an end-of-the-world Dragon Ball fight up there, the rest of the community was trying to keep up. From an outsider's point of view, this was absolutely amazing to watch. Sitting around in streams all day, watching them throw attempt after attempt at what seemed to be an unbreakable wall. It's like rooting for your favorite football team. You want them to succeed, you want them to beat that level because you know how much work and effort that they put into it. There's a certain level of trust that the community has between them and the top players. Trust that sadly has been abused in the past before. As I explained in my Impossible Levels video, one of the biggest rivalries in Geometry Dash history was between Riot and Cyclic. And if you watched that video, you know how that turned out. It turned out Cyclic had cheated everything. Apparently, not a single one of his completions that we all knew him for, that we all loved him for, was legit. This is something that struck a dagger deep into the heart of the community. Up until that point, it wasn't really precedented that a community figure, someone that we all looked up to, would abuse our trust in such a blatant way. And you would think that from that, people would have learned. When you cheat, sure, short term, you get lots of attention and people think you're actually good at the game. But long term, you're not only hurting yourself, but an entire community of genuine, hard-working players. And the person I'm gonna talk about today, for some reason, just didn't get that.
He was hard to comprehend in terms of skill, just because he was such a weird player that you've never really seen before.
Like, he was beating stuff way faster than anything or anyone else. Like, it was something like people have never seen before. It was like way faster than N-Swish, like faster than anyone.
Put yourself in the mind of a player in 2020. At this point, the game has almost 7 years of incredible achievements on its back. We went from hating on hard levels to them becoming the spectacles of the community. But even then, at this point in 2020, new players were improving faster than ever. This was an era defined by a new generation of incredibly versatile players that were beating things at a faster rate than ever before. Tartarus, the hardest level at the time, had just received some competition. A new level was just added to the Demonist, and some people were saying it's harder than Tartarus. This means that for the first time in roughly 5 months, a level was actively competing with Tartarus for the #1 spot on the Demonist. This is a list that archives and ranks the 150 hardest levels that currently have been completed by a player. There was a lot of hype around this level. Just like Tartarus, it seemed to push the boundaries of what was possible at the time. It took the verifier N-Swish, who was considered the current best player, 2 entire months and 52,000 attempts to beat it. The moment this happened, a ton of top players immediately rushed to give it a try and get progress themselves. These players included Swyborg, Rory, Wolves, Crisis, and Doggy. All players that were about to become household names in the community. However, there was one player that kinda stood out from the rest. Someone almost nobody had heard of at the time. Space UK. This guy was a nobody, to put it bluntly. Before this, only some players were actually even aware of his existence to begin with. But that's only part of the reason why this completion is kinda special. Apparently, it was his 5th ever demon.
I beat the golden.
Oh, you beat it?
Oh, yeah. Holy shit, that was 1 attempt. Holy shit.
That was like, hearing the golden as a top 1 being your like 5th demon or whatever was unheard of.
To the naked eye, he came out of nowhere. Like, we knew he existed and knew he was doing it, but no one really cared until he actually did it.
This was insane. A demon is the hardest difficulty rating a level can receive, and it is split into 5 subsections, ranging from easy demon to extreme demon. Up until this point, beating any level that has reached extreme demon status would normally be a months-long journey, where you would consistently practice and hone your skills to prepare yourself for an upcoming battle. You would not just do this overnight. Playing an extreme demon is one of the toughest things you can do in this game, and even then, just being categorized as an extreme demon doesn't even mean that it's in the Demonist. There's tons of extreme levels out there now, but we only actively keep track and rank the top 150. Here is why this entire thing was kinda insane. This is Space UK's progression as a player. He started playing the game roughly in 2019 and then beat his first ever demon, Decode. A really easy demon that is a great introduction to playing harder levels in the game. As his second ever demon, he immediately decided to jump to an insane demon, Windy Landscape. As his third, he decided to go for another insane demon, Leyak. That already kind of was amazing. New players should not choose insane demons as their second and third ever. You're supposed to show a gradual increase in difficulty, which in turn helps you practice different skill sets. From having a heavy focus on the wave game mode to being memory based, there's tons of different styles that you should actively practice. So, what did Space do next?
A lot of people give Space credit to be like the original jumper. And with jumping, it basically means going from one level to a much significantly harder level. And Space was like the pioneer of that method, going for the number 2 demon at the time as his 5th.
It's really hard to put into perspective how big of a jump this is. This was the moment that first catapulted him into the mainstream community. And little did people know that this was still just the start.
Oh, this level's so shit. This level's so fucking shit.
Not only did he beat the Golden, but 3 months after that, decided to go for Tartarus. And a month after that, for Zodiac. At this point in time, this player that just came out of nowhere had beaten the entire top 5 hardest levels ever. He was slowly cementing himself as the fastest improving player the game had ever seen. And he wouldn't stop there. It was level after level after level. He just started destroying the demon list.
It was also just like mind-blowing and impressive to just see someone so nonchalantly like shred the entire demon list. Like, there's no better way to put it. He just shredded everything.
Damn. It seemed like he was here to stay. Throughout 2021, he would just be on a tear, gaining more respect and therefore more attention with every completion that he uploaded. It was so insane, in fact, that it would actually lead to his nomination as the best player of 2021, alongside Crysis, Wolves, and Trick. But there's probably one more thing that I forgot to mention. It's October the 24th. Tartarus was roughly 1 month away from having its 2nd anniversary on top of the list. No other level in the history of the game has survived this long on top. The only one that ever came close in any way was Bloodlust, with its 1 year and 2 month reign on top. This is an achievement filled with tons of history that would kinda deserve a video on its own. But the reason I'm telling you this is because on this date, Tartarus was denied its 2nd anniversary on the top.
I can't fucking react, otherwise I'm gonna cough so much. Oh my god.
It was verified by Space UK in what's known as the closed verification race. This is when the original creators of the level choose a specific amount of players to just race for the verification, almost as a sort of, here it is and good luck. This means that for the case of Slaughterhouse, any of these 13 players could have been the first to beat the level legit in a big race for glory. Whoever survived it first would have their name written down as the player to push the limits of the game to a whole new level. And that is exactly what Space did. Space was such a dominant force in that race that people were already using it as a reason to nominate Space as the best player for that year, which we now know he won by a landslide at that. This alone would already be insanely impressive by itself. But Slaughterhouse was special. It wasn't just a level to one-up Tartarus so it could get placed a step above. It was a leap in difficulty. To show you just how much it was ahead of its time, to this day, in May 2023, Slaughterhouse sits on the number 4 spot on the Demon List. Oh, look who it is. Oh. Tartarus sits at number 22. Do you realize how insane that is? The longest surviving level to ever be on top has been pushed down by 21 spots in 1.5 years. As you can see, a lot of stuff has happened in those 2 years, and Space would play a really big part in that. People weren't aware of it back then, but the next 2 years were about to become known as the Slaughterhouse era. The level would remain on top for the next 10 months, which is a testament to how fast players were actually improving. At this point, Space had overtaken the rest of the world and was officially crowned the number 1 player purely based on stats alone. That would be a title that he would hold for a really long time, because you see, he was nowhere near his peak yet.
I beat Arcturus, I think.
Wow, you literally just got 91.
Yes, sir! Yes, let's f***ing go, man. Oh my god, bro. I can't, man. This level's so bad. Yes, dude! Oh my god, yes. No. This is f***ing... Oh my god, bro. Oh my god. Yes! Yo, I just beat Kiyuki.
No, you didn't.
I did. I just beat it, but what?
Oh, okay.
Oh my god, okay. Okay, cool. Keep going, Brian. I beat Akron! I just 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 beat Akron!
At this point, he basically had achieved everything a player can achieve in this game. Acheron marked the 3rd time that Space had conquered a new top 1 demon over the years. He eventually also went on to not only beat the top 10, not only beat the top 20, but the entire main demon list. Yeah, all 75 levels completed by just 1 player. I can only imagine how many upcoming players were actually looking up to him at this point. He must have been such a big inspiration to so many people. Space himself was doing absolutely amazing. His YouTube channel was popping off. He had garnered the respect of every player in the community, and it seemed like he would go down in the game's history for being the best player to ever touch this game. Until April 2023, where one notable player finally dared to ask the question, "Hey Space, why do your clicks not line up with your gameplay?"
I would call this the largest scale hacking scandal we've ever seen in this game.
He was forced to confess. It was not something that he did willingly.
It changed an entire 2 years of Geometry Dash top player history.
I know how much money you made from YouTube. It wasn't a small amount.